So, you've now heard from some of our keynotes about what effective leadership looks like from their expertise. But the question is, what do our TMMC executives think? It's important to note that although the concepts, thank you, Steph, concepts may be learned from external executives, our TMMC executives also share those leadership qualities, but they may have a different internal perspective to learn from. All three of them have different career paths here at Toyota. Some of you may already know, some of you may not, but we're going to bring them up today to share what they believe, what their personal experiences have been, and what they believe or what they think with regard to some unique leadership topics. So, like the other external speakers, I'm going to give them a little bit of a background before I bring them up. Some of them you already know, so I'm going to go into a little bit of a brief description then. Derek Kidney. Derek is our general manager of West Plant at TMMC, and through his role, he oversees production of the RAV4 and all operation at TMMC's Woodstock plant, which all of you may know. At least you should know. Derek joined TMMC back in 1992 as a manufacturing engineering specialist in the paint shop. Prior to his current role, he served as Chief Production Engineer of Vehicle Planning and Production Engineering at TEMA's Canadian branch office, and most recently, the General Manager of Production Control at TMMC. He holds an Honors Bachelor of Applied Science degree from the University of Waterloo. Stephanie Pollard. Stephanie is our Vice President of Administration and Corporate Secretary at TMMC, which encompasses overseeing HR, finance, corporate planning, IS, production control, and purchasing. She joined TMMC back in 1989 as a finance specialist and rotated into HR shortly after. Stephanie then transferred to TMMC in Japan for a 2-year assignment in the global HR department. And previous to her current role was the General Manager of Production Control. Stephanie holds an MBA and CPA designation, and prior to joining TMMC, she worked for Canada Packers in various accounting functions. And last but not least, Aaron Buchanan. Aaron is the Chief Production Engineer of Vehicle Planning and Production Engineering at TMNA's Canadian branch office and oversees pre-production preparation projects for all new vehicle models at TMMC. She joined Toyota in 2001 as an engineering specialist in the Assembly Engineering Group at NUMMI, the GM Toyota joint venture company, and rotated into paint engineering shortly thereafter. Prior to joining Toyota, Aaron worked at GM for the Bowling Green Corvette plant in the paint engineering department, and she holds an Honors Bachelor of Applied Science in Chemical Engineering, also from the University of Waterloo. Before I bring them up, I'd also like to introduce our chair for YP, Peter Mullen, to get things started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. So if you'd like to come join us up front, we're going to begin this panel. So we have seven questions that we're going to be going through and hearing the different perspectives from our leaders here. It's going to be incredible. I'm excited.
Yes, it will be.
Thank you for joining us up here. So the first question, I guess I also have the clicker. So we're going to be looking at is a little bit more of a get to know you question. Oh, that's your executives. Which is, describe your leadership style. Is there anything you would like to change or you would change? This is a question for all of you, so maybe Aaron, you seem ready.
I've been looking forward to this all day. My leadership style, I would certainly describe myself as a non-authoritative leader. I prefer more of a cooperative environment with my team. One of the speakers talked about the different styles, and he used the cheerleader as one of those examples, and I would kind of classify myself on the more of the cheerleader realm. I care very much about my team and why they come to work every day, and I like to learn about what's important to them and their values, and incorporate that into my leadership style.
Thank you, Aaron. How about you, Derek?
I think for me, the first is I try to, what do I look for in the leaders that I respect, and how do I emulate those things in myself? And a lot of those things came through, and actually in today's reviews, whether it's admiring something that's whether it's a technical skill or a dealing with people skill, also the trust factor, whether that's the trust of trust that people can share information with you, and trust that you'll either do something with it, keep it confidential, or and also inspiring and motivating myself. So I think anyone that works with me, a couple of things that you will notice though that I do have is calmness and chaos. Is collaborative. I find that a group of people that are stranded on a desert island have a better chance of surviving than an individual. So collaborative and getting multiple input from people. And also trying to make sure that the good leaders should be adapting their style to different people and different techniques. And that's something that is I'm still learning how to do that over time.
Sweet. Thanks, Derek. How about you, Steph?
So I'm just going to start by saying this is my perception of my leadership style, because everyone who reports to me is in this room, and they may have a different opinion. But anyway, I'll take a stab at it. I think I'm pretty directive in my approach. And it depends on who it is that I'm dealing with. We talked a little bit about this earlier. I don't think any leader is one person. You need to be flexible. You need to understand the people that you're leading and respond accordingly. So I am, with certain people, more directive. I do believe that I support the groups that report to me, very much so. I am not afraid to say that I don't agree with something, and I think that's just as I've gotten older, I've been less afraid to do that, and as I've worked here longer.
You also became higher in the company.
Well, I guess, thanks for clarifying that. Yes, that could be one aspect. So I think I'm certainly somebody who can be an advocate for people that work my group. I believe my role is to support the group, certainly, and pave a path forward. Part of what I like to do is ensure that there's less conflicts when we go to get things approved. And I have a good relationship with Fred. Usually every night we're talking, chatting, while we're both in our cars, and we're not interrupted by anyone wanting us to sign a ringy. And we're getting caught up on the day, and usually I say, hey, something's going on tomorrow, or you're going to have a meeting about this, and this is what I think, and then we'll chat about it, and I think it helps to pave the path forward for a better dialogue when we're all together.
That's great. Thank you. So the next question we have is, what is TMMC's greatest learning point from today, from our keynotes today? So, in your opinion, what is something that TMMC could really take away from the talks we had today? So let's start with Steph again. Okay.
I think the gratitude aspect, it's been brought up by a number of people. I think personally I have to reflect on that. Somebody said to me, and that person knows who they are, they're in the room, said to me before Christmas, boy, that was really nice. Thanks for saying that, because usually you're just really critical. So I took that as I was not surprised, but it really kind of set me back, and I thought, hey, that's not a good situation. So I am really grateful for the people that work for me. In most of my career, the people that I'm more impressed with are the people that work for me. And this is not a reflection on Fred. I'm talking about the span of my entire career. But a lot of people that work for me, I look at the skills and qualities that they have, and I think, hey, I wish I could be a little bit more like that. So it's a great collaborative environment, and I truly am grateful for everyone, people that report for me, people in my groups, and people that don't report to me that do just a fantastic job here.
Yeah, that's right. How about you, Aaron?
I second the grateful comment. Everybody was joking as we were texting each other. I'm grateful for your messages, but and most people's response was that their husband or their wife was saying, "Are you drunk?" Like, we don't say that enough. So I think we all can benefit from that. I also think TMMC can show more vulnerability. I think it's okay to be vulnerable and to be willing to make a mistake in order to be innovative, and I think that's maybe going to be the starting You're Impossible. I also think we need to recognize, the number really stuck with me, 90,000 hours of our life is at work. So you're spending tenfold more time with your colleagues and your friends at work than your family at home. I joke that I have several work husbands, and because I spend 10 times more time with them. Oh, Derek. I do. And it's like, let's be honest, my husband doesn't know what I do. My kids, my husband digs tunnels, and mommy's a boss. That's all they know at home. And so I think we need to be honest about that and really respect each other and make everybody value their day, because I think we're here together, right? It's all about people.
How about you, Derek?
I think people well-being is a great example. Sometimes we're in a big place, in a big factory, and we need to make sure that we're taking care of our people. So things like making sure they don't go fly fishing when it's West Nile season is important. Similarly, that they're also not flying when there's an H1N1 crisis going on. Right? Those are good. I think I also learned today that if you make hundreds of millions of dollars for your shareholders, that they will take care of you when things go bad. And I think Toyota has a lot of those characteristics, and I think we've seen that in the past, and I think that's a good thing that we need to remember and keep in mind. We want to make sure that we promote people's authenticity. Sometimes I can be too nice, but that's also part of my personality and part of my authenticity, which I need to make sure that we keep. And I think the other thing that we saw today was the importance of family. That's also a key thing for us not to forget again that our well-being is part of at home and at work. We need to make sure that we're helping and supporting both.
Yeah, that's very right. That's very true. So thank you for your answers. Now we're going to start, instead of having all three of us answer each question, we're going to do breaking up to two each. So our first question. Okay, I won't tell everyone that. We're going to do question number 3, which is how do you motivate others and stay motivated yourself? So, Erin, how about yourself?
How do I motivate others and stay motivated myself? One, I try to show enthusiasm in the work that I'm doing and try to make the projects and the work fun. I mean, let's be honest, sometimes it's not. But we do our best to put on a positive face. I like to show appreciation to my team, thank them for their efforts, and if and correct when things aren't going so well, but more in a private setting. I think it's important to commend in front of the organization, but correction is more of a private activity, face to face, because belittling people isn't going to drive the organization. It's not going to solve the problem. Our jobs are to problem solve, and some problems are very difficult, but we can still have that positive reinforcement showing that the efforts being made are appreciated.
Yeah, that's right. How about you, Derek?
So, having coming through with an engineering background, and even before I did that, one of my hobbies was building things and solving puzzles, which tailors very well into problem solving, and my motivation would be to get the solution. When I started at Toyota, and as I started to evolve, I just assumed that was the same thing that motivated everybody else. If I help Erin fix a problem, she'll be happy and be motivated, or if I help Stephanie fix a problem, she'll be happy and be motivated. And that worked because there's lots of engineers here, that works for lots of them, but it didn't work for everybody. And I did find that different people have different things that motivate them, and it's important to take the time to understand what those things are for those individuals, and be careful that what you think is motivating them is actually demotivating them. Not everybody likes to be up in front of a group of people and get a pat in the back or a public reward. They'd rather have it in a private room or somewhere else where it's a little bit more quaint. So anyway, I think it's important to make sure that you recognize what are the drivers and motivators for your people, and try to tailor your behavior to best get or support those members.
Yeah, so a lot about having a relationship first, and then kind of building off that and personalizing it for each person.
That's right. Having that understanding of the team or the members around you is critical to be able to, or else you'll make those misjudgments. And I'm sure I've made lots of them over the years.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. So question number 4 is going to be, what do you believe you can control to help people feel valued at work? Steph, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that value comes from just the way people intrinsically think about themselves, and walking away from a conversation or making a presentation or solving a problem. You're going to increase their sense of value if you are listening. For one thing, I think that's a huge thing that we don't always do well. That we're communication in general it can be the success or failure of anything is about being a good communicator, and people are feeling valued if you're not in a meeting looking at your phone, for example, which we all tend to do. That we're focused on what they're saying, that we're providing good input, that they're feeling like, hey, that was a good experience for me, it was well worth it. And I think we talked a lot about this concept of gratitude, which we think about things in terms of what people want and need, and maybe we think about pay, and we think about the things that help us, outside of work. But the biggest things that I've experienced in my career that made me feel the most valued were the really, really small things, the things where someone just came up to me and said, hey, that was great, or wrote me a note or an email, because it's unbelievable how those things impact people. Like you can't even explain how it makes you feel, and those things, they don't happen very often, and you tend to remember those things for a very, very long time. So it's about the acknowledgement, and it's about being out of your comfort zone. Again, we're in a sort of a tougher environment where sometimes our mentors have never been like that with us, and so we tend to sometimes mimic that behavior. But I genuinely believe that if you did that more with your own staff and with your peers, I do believe that the environment changes and people feel valued by being recognized and thanked for their efforts.
So really it ties into gratitude, to the point we had before. Yeah, that's right. So Erin, how about yourself? What do you think about that topic?
I think Stephanie touched, hit the nail on the head. Simply saying thank you to your colleagues, to your team for the work that they're doing, showing appreciation for the work that's been done. Not everything is going to be a home run, not every result is going to be exactly as we intended, but we can still thank each other for the work. And honestly, I think making eye contact, stopping in your crazy busy day, just putting your cell phone down to make eye contact, to listen to what people are saying and really hear what they're trying to tell you. And on another note, I think because we spend so much time together getting to know people and what their interests are outside of work, whether it's sitting, having a cup of coffee, if it's a lot of how we interact with each other, we're impacted by our external factors. So I think people feel valued if you really know them, that you really understand where they come from and what their belief systems are and their values. I think that brings that value into the workplace.
On your answer, you've actually kind of touched a bit on the authenticity piece as well. So like being authentic and in your gratefulness.
Being genuine and there in the moment with your coworkers.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Erin.
It's a lot easier to be yourself than to pretend to be someone else, right? So I mean, that's really the point. And I think hopefully I am true to that. What I am at work, I am who I am. I'm the same outside of work as I am in work, and I don't want to expend extra energy trying to be someone else or something else. So I think it's really important.
Great. Thank you so much for the answers to that question. One thing I was going to mention before we started was you can please take note if you have any questions. We're going to be opening up the floor again at the end for more questions. So if you have questions on specific answers that they provided or things like that, we would love to open up that for questions. So you have notebooks in your little bags, so you can use those. Next question. Describe a time that you wish you led differently, or you wish you led someone differently. Derek, do you have a specific thought on that?
I'm going to twist this a little bit. So I had, I've had many different leaders or people that I've worked for over the years, both here at TMMC and also when I was at TEMA. Sometimes you don't realize the value or the benefit of a leader until you don't have that leader anymore. So I did go through a cycle where I went through a phase where I worked for somebody that was very diligent and meticulous, and at the time I honestly thought it was maybe a bit of a pain in the ass. and then I moved on to work for somebody that was much less meticulous and much I had a lot of freedom, and I could had much more freedom, and it seemed like a much different work environment. And then over time again, I evolved back to a different person who again was a very meticulous style and a very, and I found that I had to, as I was adjusting myself to those different people that I was working for, the only way that I could describe my performance, or the way that I went from being sharp to dull to sharp. And sharp in the crispness of my work, or the crispness of the things that I was doing, and the attention to details are important. So as much as a pain in the ass I maybe had at the beginning, it was probably one of the biggest learning opportunities I had. And in reflection, I probably learned more through those experiences than I had where I didn't have that same detailed coaching and understanding the importance of those details. So I guess my message to the group is, you may have a boss or a leader that's a pain in the butt, but there's a reason, and they're trying to coach you, and they're trying to help you, and they're trying to make you better. So don't always look at it as a negative thing. Try to think of the positive things that you're going to get out of that experience.
Most people don't train to be a bad leader.
Exactly.
They are trying to be a good leader. Rick Lamb actually mentioned that in our executive lunch with YP, just as a plug.
That's a good call.
A plug for YP.
He's got a big smile on his face. He obviously agrees with that comment.
So you're not calling him a pain in the ass. That's what
Whoa.
you're saying. He's a good boss.
So how about, what do you think, Steph, about that topic?
Yeah, I think all of us, if you're a good leader, you're going to probably reflect on that even every day, right? The things that you've done that day, and the way that you responded to something that you could have done differently. I think in the way you respond to someone, we talked about fight or flight earlier, and we've all been in positions where we feel like we're being squeezed and we're under pressure, and being a good leader means you've got to be more like Derek lots of times, and be calm. And sometimes for me, sometimes that shows a side of me that I don't like and that I want to improve, which is to just be a little more calmer and sit back and be more respectful to some of the people. And hopefully it doesn't happen often, but I do know that there's been a few situations, and for me it makes me think about it a lot, that night or next day. And so it's you got to make mistakes to sometimes reflect on these things. I've been in situations where I've probably made poor decisions around who can handle certain work. So we often say that you have to fail to learn, and you have to be okay as a leader sometimes to let your reports fail, because that's the greatest opportunity to learn. But there is a point after which you don't want people to go too far, right? There is a point where you definitely have to step in and make some other decisions, or take over for a period of time, or whatever it is. And so I think there's been situations in my career where that's happened. And I think in terms of people who have maybe not mentored me in the way that I would have liked. Early in my career, I never really felt like I had a lot of strong mentors in my career. I felt like, especially in the early days, we used to always say, this is OJD. Like, here's a project, go for it. And this is part of your on-the-job development, which sometimes is characterized as, doesn't matter that I'm your boss, do it, and then I'll evaluate you at the end of the process. And that's very much not what OJD is, and it's very much about certainly coaching and making sure you're checking in and making sure that you're providing the support at the same time as your reports to are hopefully developing and learning along the way. So I think more so now, I have that awareness as a leader of the company. I don't want to do that to anybody who's reporting to me. I want to make sure that I'm providing good support and also an opportunity for people to stumble along the way. As long as it's not a crisis, I think it's okay for that. And that means that as leaders, we have to be willing to be the one to wear it sometimes. And that's hard for this company. It's hard for us because we all want to be perfect, and it's a reflection on us, but truly, you're going to get all kinds of long-term gain by having those people falter and learn along the way.
Awesome. Thank you, Steph. Next question we're going to ask is, what is the biggest leadership lesson you have learned over your career? Erin, what is a leadership lesson you have learned over your career?
Well, to kind of reflect on what Chantal was saying, I, very early on in my career, entering into this aggressive automotive industry, I heard from many people, you're too girly, you're too emotional, you're too soft, you need to get thicker skin, you need to be more like that guy. And I knew, and I made the decision very early on in my career that I was going to maintain my authentic self, even if I was going to be I was going to stick out like a sore thumb. I knew that the time would come when I wouldn't stick out like a sore thumb if I just stayed to my own true core self. And I've tried to stay the course. I'm still a little soft and emotional and girly, but that's who I am. And luckily the industry has evolved in my favor, so I don't feel like a black sheep anymore. I've learned to be mindful of other people's feelings and try to put myself in other people's shoes and try to think, what are they thinking? What are they feeling? Why are they coming at this problem from that perspective? Because if I can understand where their mindset is, then maybe together we can work to resolve the problem or achieve the end result. So I think between the authenticity, the vulnerability, but also the care factor and the nurturing for people, I think those things I've learned throughout my career have made me successful on teams. I've been able to collaborate with people, and I think those lessons kind of came with age and maturity, because it doesn't come with a degree that you get in school.
Yeah. Thank you, Erin. How about yourself, Derek?
So I think for me, early on in my career, I would have had, you would spend time listening for understanding, right? So if people were trying to bring things to you or ideas to you, you would need to make sure you took the time to listen and understand. But I still would ask questions, and sometimes not really knowing it, the questions might come across as, it might be undermining or be taken the wrong way. And I found over time I had to learn, to ask the questions for understanding, right? The purpose of the question is to better understand. It's not to challenge or not to say that, that I don't agree with the item. And learning to do that, I found that also helps to coach people and develop people to go back and work better or work on their items or maybe consider a different point of view or a different shareholder's point of view and try to come back with a more rounded picture. The other item from a leadership lesson, I'd say, is continuing and always taking responsibility for things that are your responsibility. You may not always be fair. It may not always be within your control. Something might happen that you can't. Whether it's the weather or whether it's the politics, it could be anything. But ultimately, somebody has to take responsibility for it, and you can't lose sight of that responsibility that we have.
So a lot of it, what you're saying is like learn how to ask the right questions that will further the person along the journey that you would like them to be on.
That's right. That's right. It's a I think it's part of helping to develop trust in the communication. If you ask the questions the wrong way, then they don't, they would, fight. It's kind of like the example of the kid taking the cookies, right? And oh, did you eat the cookies? And if you ask it in the wrong way, the kid will go into the fight or flight type mechanism, and you don't want that mechanism to happen. You may want to you want to try to change the question so that it becomes less less threatening to the interaction.
Great. Thank you so much for that answer. The next question we have, or the final question really, is what is the one behavior or trait that you've seen derail most leaders' careers at TMMC? Erin, how about yourself?
I think the number one is a leader that doesn't take responsibility and take ownership for the failure of the team. As a leader, you're leading the team, you're leading the charge, you're making tough decisions, and they may not always be a success. But if the ship is going down, the captain of the ship has to still take full responsibility and have ownership. That means backing the decisions of your team, having their back. They're going to make mistakes, right? That's the reality. We're human beings, but a good leader will have your back, support you, even if the end result isn't exactly what everybody wants. And so for a leader to be able to do that, they have to be humble and vulnerable and willing to say, my team wasn't exactly the success I wanted to, but you know what? It's my team. I own them. I'm going to take responsibility for how this went. And I think a leader that isn't willing to do that and is going to separate themselves from the team, that project was a total bust, but it wasn't my project. You have to. A leader doesn't mean you're separated. You're a collaborative part of the organization, and I think that ownership is really important.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin. How about you, Steph?
Yeah, very much the same. Really, it's about respect, and you have to have your members and the people outside your group respect you. If you don't have that, no one will want to work for you or with you. And I think if you're somebody who thinks it's all about him or her, there's no way. You're not here. And I find this, again, because maybe a longer tenure, but I think way less about my own development and a lot more about my team's development, because that's my job, is to make sure that as people move on and succession or opportunity happens, that's my job, is to look less about me and more about everyone else. And hopefully, the things that are the qualities of the leaders in this company, the good leaders, people want to work for those people, and they want to be a part of that group and that team, because those individuals are looking out for their own team, and they know that they're going to gain the most by working in that kind of environment. So I think we talk about derailing. In our company, probably it's more about a less effective manager than complete and utter annihilation. So it is sort of a measure, and there's degrees, and I think there's very much things that we can do, even as people have that reputation. It's hard to get out of it, but I don't think it's a completely lost cause, and I think people can think differently about how they manage, and they can make improvements and can change throughout their career. So I think that's still possible.
Is another way of looking at what you just said, the idea of learning to become a better leader for the sake of the team, not just for your own gain. So it's like the encouragement of becoming a leader so that your team can grow and become more effective rather than you get a promotion. Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, what do they say? Great leaders are the ones that have people that are much smarter than working for them, right? Yeah, I believe that. Very, very much so. I mean, there's a direction you can provide, but people have to be able to, develop and grow underneath you, and that has to be the priority.
Sorry, how does that apply to when you are not in a role where you lead others? Is there a way to apply that when you're just leading yourself?
Yeah, I think I think, especially the nature of the work that we do here at Toyota, where it's very team-based, I think you can certainly, without having a position or being in a member of management, people are always working on teams or projects or problems, and you can be engaging with groups and show strong leadership behaviors, and you can be somebody who shows not so strong leadership behaviors just in the way that you interact with the group and how you draw out solutions from those team members. And think about the fact that as you join the organization and you're maybe in a specialist role, your peers are very much going to have an influence on your perception within the organization, and I think your leadership skills can be quite evident even without being in a management role.
Awesome. Well, that's actually all the questions we have prepared for today. So what we're going to do is we're going to open it up to the audience to ask questions about TMMC, TMMC leadership, management, just kind of the how of it, and maybe the heart behind it, not necessarily about policy or procedure. If you have a policy or procedure question, please direct that to your direct supervisor. But we want to kind of flesh out some of these ideas, maybe apply it more to your context, kind of things like that. So please, do you guys want to kind of do what Chantal did and walk around, or is that something you're able to do? We can draw out some ideas.
I'm able to walk.
You're able to walk, yeah? All right, let's do it. We'll see how this goes. Put your hand up or wave, or if you have a question.
You want to ask a question?
I'll ask a question of Stephanie, because she's usually the one asking me questions.
Fair enough.
Stephanie,
Yes,
30
Frank.
years ago when you started working here as a finance specialist, what were your career aspirations? And if your aspirations were not to be an executive of the company, when did you come to that realization that there is a possibility that your career path will take you to this point?
Good question. And for everyone's knowledge, Frank and I started on the same day.
And you were doing accounting, the devil's
So
work.
we must have been talking about this at that time. Frank, that's a really good question. I think when I started here in finance, that had been my career up to that point. So I sort of moved from Canada Packers to Toyota in a similar field. And I wasn't really used to an organization where the opportunities for me to go outside of that were very evident. So I think probably when someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You're going to HR," and Ted Yakoy at the time was scared to death that an accountant was going into HR. And Joe Beamson at the time said, "Oh boy, you've got a lot of hard edges on you. Everything's black and white. You're going to need some real development." I think that was probably one of the moments where I thought, hey, this company is different, and this company, I'm really going to be stretched because although I have a business degree, I don't know too much about HR, and I think that experience, honestly, probably was the best of my career. I learned so much in HR, and actually I really love HR, even though some people really hate it. But I think it's really an engaging area, and I think when I went to PC, and I was a general manager at the time, and Frank Vanders, there you go. Frank said to me one time, "I never want to follow your career because it's like one crisis after another." And that was when I started HR as general manager. We had the union certification, and then we had PC, we had tsunami, we had polar vortex, etc. So I think the experiences that I've had have been really rallying around crisis for the most part, at least for the last 10 years. And so I never really came into this gig wanting to or thinking I was going to be in this position at all. Of course, I wanted to move up through the organization. And my first experience of promotion was, I think I was a spec 2. And I said to my boss at the time, it was Mike Graydon, I said, "Hey, Mike, we were on a business trip. What do I do to get promoted around here? What happens?" And it was just me asking. It wasn't that I expected him to do anything. And then shortly after, I was moved up. But sometimes that's also it's the clarity of what you have to do, and maybe it's having a good communication and dialogue with your management. But I definitely I didn't come here with this dream of being in this current job, and it's just kind of evolved, and I've been very fortunate to have some great experiences along the way, and hopefully imparting a bit of wisdom on people that I work with now. Thanks, Frank.
JD.
Aaron, I'll ask this question to you. What are some of your tactics that you use to motivate people?
What do I use to motivate people? One, I think I try to make the end goal very clear, to try to put the team on this common path, common goal. Because if you understand what you're doing here, what your purpose is, what we're trying to achieve, it's much more motivating, because if we don't know what we're doing here, it's kind of a waste of time. It aligns the team. I also like to provide regular feedback and let people know how they're doing, and you know, what the organization is observing as far as their achievements. And I genuinely try to show my softer, caring side to let people know that I genuinely care about how they're doing, how they're feeling at work. Are they feeling valued? I want to know, and I want to support them as individuals.
I'd like to ask, do any of the panelists, I guess we call you guys the panelists, have any specific mentors of note that you're willing to share that maybe helped in your development?
Maybe just for me, one of the mentors, and I think we learn a lot from everybody, including, as I mentioned earlier, people that report up through us or we work with. Graham Brown, I don't know if most of you guys remember Graham. So he was general manager of HR, and he was brought in from outside. And so at that time, I was AGM, and I learned a lot from him because he wasn't a Toyota guy, and he took a different approach to things, and his mandate was really about making change happen. And he did start a lot of that here, and I think it was at the exact right time. And he had a lot of really pure HR experience through consulting and so on that I really enjoyed working with him. And I liked that perspective. And I was pretty upset when he left. He was somebody that I wanted to continue to learn with. So, and to this day, I still keep in touch with him. So we do some consulting and conversations on occasion. So yeah, he was, for me, he was very much a mentor.
I've had some mentors that I think probably encouraged me to pursue positions in the organization that I otherwise wouldn't have even considered. Asking me to take specific job assignments in areas that I historically would have thought there's no way I can do that. I don't know jack diddly about that topic, but asking me, basically encouraging me to put myself out there and try something different, knowing that, yeah, I might not be the subject matter expert on that assignment on day one, but kind of reiterating that individual's confidence in me that, you know what, Aaron, you can learn it, you'll be successful, so that I wasn't so terrified to try that unique assignment.
And I think for me, I want to talk mainly about, I've had many mentors over the years, but Hiro Kazoni, who was one of our advisors, when I first started here, he was a stamping advisor, and then he actually came back as a senior advisor for the body shop. Probably the best problem solver I've ever met. And his ability to break things down to be very simple and clear and concise, those skills I still use today. So I would say, when you're looking for mentors, our advisors that are here from Japan are probably some of the best skills that we have that we may not always tap into as much as I think we could take advantage of. At least for me, they were probably one of the most valuable skills that I had, or resources that I had, sorry.
Just a quick question for Derek. Derek, one of your answers to your question was specifically around a leader that you had worked for that not until his absence, and I think we've worked with the same guy, not until his absence do you recognize some of the leadership traits and things that they did to help you develop yourself. Based on your leadership style, and again, collaborative, a little more team-oriented, do you think that provoking a fight or flight risk is a viable leadership trait when used properly, or do you think that because that individual you're talking about probably would have used that more often than not as a motivator?
So maybe first I'll talk about, I think for myself, trying to decide when to use that technique and when not to use that technique is the key. Your natural, my personality trait tends to make me more cooperative, and it's a little more difficult for me to be that more on the confrontational side. But there are times when the confrontational side is much more successful and necessary and required than the cooperative type leadership. Maybe a funny story, the individual that maybe we would be talking about, I remember walking out one day and actually said to the person, if I didn't understand your management technique, I think I'd punch you in the nose. and they said to me, the answer was, well, why? And I said, you're an extremely intelligent person. I said, you know that I can't possibly do this 3,000 items on the list that you have that's due tomorrow. It's impossible to do that, and you must realize that that's impossible. But I said, I think you know that by asking for 1,000 items, maybe I'll get 100 done instead of 20, and that'll be more than what I would have got done if I didn't have the list there in the first place. And so but those are the kind of learning points. But of course, the technique could have been a little bit better. And I like to think that understanding what were the key points or the important points that I can kind of pull into my leadership style to try to emulate without emulating the entire thing and making it a more comfortable place to work at.
Or you could have just given them a coffee and a piece of chocolate and it would have been okay, right?
Dark chocolate.
Yeah, dark chocolate.
So I think that's a good example of maybe not the greatest full-blown leadership style, but there's some good traits that you could take away, and then using emotional intelligence to decide when is the right time to bring that forward. And
I think with leadership style, like you have the easy people that listen to you and follow you, and that what do you find motivates the people who maybe are a lot more resistant or need that extra leadership? What skills work? And that's for anyone.
I think some of those more difficult, and you are the lucky one who gets to spend a lot of time with difficult people. I think I think being sometimes you have to be very black and white, very directive with what the assignment is, what the task is, what the end result is. And then there's other times where you can allow people to be creative and go through their own problem-solving process to come up with an innovative solution. And then there's other times that you do have to be directive. And like Derek, I don't bring my B side very often, but there's times that it's going to come, and I save it, right? So again, it's when to use that.
And I also think it's important to, there's times when it's a coaching session, and then there are times when it's simply, that's the direction, and the direction is clear, and we all need to go in that direction and recognize that that's what needs to be done. And that differentiating those two messages is sometimes necessary to get that alignment.
And I think there's a difference between somebody who's maybe not motivated and versus somebody who's intentionally not doing what they are supposed to do, which, Catherine, you probably deal with more than anyone else. So, there's a process. It's not something that we enjoy here, like the whole performance improvement or holding people accountable who have some chronic issues with performance. But it's part of a lot of our jobs here to address those things and to set objectives and to follow up. And it's kind of a thankless job, but we have to do that. And if it's somebody who's really just somehow they're just not motivated, and this goes back to understanding your people, trying to determine, is there a trigger, there's something going on in their life that's, changed their motivation at work. How do you find that out? How do you try and make things better by having those conversations? So I think it's very different if you're just talking about someone who's a poorer performer versus somebody who's somehow lost their motivation along the way. And that's where, as leaders, I think we can hopefully help.
Oh, Sam.
So one of the topics that we talked about was understanding the individuals in your team and having a management style that's a little tailored to different members of your team. What advice would you have in situations where maybe the leadership style that an individual on your team needs kind of conflicts with how you view your own personal leadership style?
I think there's the authentic self and recognizing your own strengths and weaknesses, because we all have them, and you need to be vulnerable and honest with yourself and accept that we're not amazing at everything all the time. So once you can get your own authenticity, and I think then you're probably more open to observe those special traits and special needs of the team. But if you haven't even really recognized where your own gaps are, you're going to be closed off to be able to identify those gaps in others, right?
When I was working with TIMA, we actually went through an exercise where the team went through, I think it was Enneagram training, and we all went through Phil's laughing because I think he was part of that. And part of it was, so that not only did we, it was each of the people in the team, we could kind of recognize what the different characteristics were, and we all would kind of guess what everybody was before we filled in the survey. We probably got the answer wrong. I'm going to say 80% of the time. At least in my case, I was wrong a lot more often than I was right, and it was actually a very eye-opening for me to think, my perception may not actually be correct. And so taking a little bit more time to try to make sure that we understand those things is important. So I'm not sure in your case the best way or if in your question, I should say, is the best way to try to, to get that message across is there's many techniques to do that. But that was a forum that I found very interesting for myself.
I came out of that week kind of knowing how everybody, just their baseline, and it helped me immensely over the next 4 years.
So for new people rotating into a group or an organization, that kind of exercise helps build that, somebody else talked about networking and relationships. It really helps to kind of break down some of those barriers.
And to be able to build a successful team if you understand kind of what those different traits are, because there's just certain personalities that are never going to thrive together. That doesn't mean on separate different teams that they wouldn't be successful. So there is a skill in creating an effective team.
So with that, we're actually going to close this section off. We have, you can email me. So if you have a question that was not answered, I would like you to please email me at peter.mullen@toy.com. You can ask me, you can send me the email or email me any questions for one of these three or any of the external speakers, Chantal, Dave, or Jim. You can email any of the questions for them. I'll forward them to them, and they'll send you a personal email back or a personal response back, and I will send it over to you. So please ask any further questions if you want to follow up with that stuff. So we're done. The first question we have is, what now? We've just spent almost 4 hours learning about leadership here at Toyota, and we think to ourselves, so we just sat, what are we going to do with this information? There's such incredible nuggets of wisdom through that whole process, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. It can be just a ton of information. Right now, you feel like you can handle it all. In 2 weeks from now, you will have forgotten a lot of it. So what I really want to encourage you, there's two things I want to encourage you to do. To this weekend, go home and reflect on kind of where you're at right now with your leadership. Where do you feel that you sit in terms of how you lead, what your weaknesses are, what your strengths are, and kind of get that baseline. And then look back at your notes from today. Hopefully you took a lot of notes. We will be posting this or sharing this video of today's talk for you to review later as well. But think about the one thing. We've talked about this point a couple times through the session, but we want you to take away at least one thing that you can use to help you become a better leader in the organization. What Fred said at the beginning is really important. We are hitting a bunch of really strong internal challenges and external challenges. And the only way that we're going to overcome them as an organization is if each one of us, each one of the people in the room, and each one of the people on your teams around you, each to start taking on that mantle of leadership and the idea of how do you lead and do the best job that you can do in that spot that you are. We need you to become better at leadership so that when our organization continues to grow and take on new challenges, that we can rely on leaders throughout the organization at every level to carry the weight of what we're trying to do. And so that is kind of why we've started, why we did this event, is to starting that thought. And that's another reason why we started the Young Professional BPG here at Toyota. So some of you may or may not have heard of it, but we are a group of people who are focusing on professional development and learning to be better. Don't let the word young deter you or discount you from this. I know there's a lot of people in my group, they're like, a lot of them are older than I am and say, I'm not young, how can I be? We should make an old farts group that we can be a part of. And that's not true. That's not what this is about. The young is not really applicable to this. What this is a group of people who are striving to become better, who want to make a bigger difference where they're at in the company. And we want to equip you and outfit you with the resources that you need to achieve those goals. So that is why we exist. We have events throughout the year. Right now we're doing a monthly lunch with the executives where they'll present a content, one of their ideas on leadership and management, and we'll unpack it with them. And you are all more than welcome to join. If you are interested in joining, I don't know where that slide is. Whatever. If you're welcome to join, you can email me at tmmcyp@toyota.com and with your interest to join. But it is a really important thing for Toyota is developing and leadership so that we can start your impossible. So with that, we want to thank you all for coming to the first ever leadership summit here at TMMC. I learned a lot. It was incredible. There was a lot of really interesting nuggets of wisdom again shared today from our external speakers and our internal leaders here as well. So we want to first, I guess we'll do some round of applause first for the external speakers and just everything they've done. So yes, thank you so much. Also, our three awesome panelists, thank you for risking the stage with us. We appreciate you. So we'll clap for them too. A little known group that we haven't quite identified them yet, but we have Conestoga College here and two students specifically who help set up all the lighting, the sound, and they're doing all the video recording today to make the video. So please a round of applause to thank them. You guys have done a great job. I think this is the best the visitor center's ever looked in my short time here at Toyota. So I really appreciate all that you've done. We also had Aramark. Today was the first really big event for Toyota. They were working hard to show off their finest today. I think they provided some pretty good food. So if you see anyone from Aramark, I really appreciate them. So round of applause for Aramark. And finally, we had a group of individuals who were the planning committee for this group. So specifically, David Play, Vanessa Montana, Jennifer Tu, Sam Hazel, and Caitlin Fanning, and Lesh. I never remember how to pronounce your last name. I apologize. But we all worked hard today. So let's have a round of applause for this. They did a great job. Those are our major thank yous. This is the slide I was hoping to be at. We have TMMCYP.toyota.com. So if you're interested in joining and learning more and pushing this organization forward in terms of leadership and professional development, we would love for you to join us. That is all. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you have a great time. If there's any extra food, feel free to take it with you. There's probably a lot.